Rugby with Huw Griffin.
Welcome back, Huw Griffin. You know, if you live in Africa and you do business on the internet and the internet goes down, everything comes to a screeching halt. You would have seen a lack of activity on all my channels last week, and it's because some super duper server in Joburg was out. So thank you for your patience last week and welcome back. It's good to see you again.
Yes, it's good to be back then, but I missed it last week, so I'm happy to be back speaking to you.
I missed your shirt last week, man, and I'm happy to see you wearing a Scarlets shirt. I said to you when we started talking tonight, I'm going to be supporting Scarlets this weekend simply because they're not Leinster. Any team that's not Leinster, I'll be supporting this weekend. But tell me about that shirt firstly, as we traditionally do.
So this isn't a particularly interesting one. This is off an app that we have in the UK. I don't know if you have it down there, called Vinted, where people sell secondhand clothes, and it's a treasure trove for Scarlets stuff. And I think got this for £2 or £3, Great British pounds, which is nothing for us. And it's secondhand, like I said, and it's just a training polo. It's not a match day thing, so it's kind of filler in my collection. But because this is the beginning of the week, what will be a historic week of Scarlets' repeat history in defeating Leinster in a URC knockout game, I thought I'd better wear the uniform.
Well, let me just do a quick type here. So to find out, your shirt should be pretty much close to getting to London, I suppose. Anytime soon now, your Bull shirt. The one you're going to be crowning, the crowning, jewel in your jersey collection. I'm sure you can't wait for that day.
I genuinely can't wait. I genuinely can't wait. And if I am to fulfill my pledge of wearing a different rugby jersey every week, I'm going to need to buy more rugby jerseys.
Oh.
So
you don't have 52 rugby jerseys, I suppose.
I don't have 52 rugby jerseys. No, I am going to be doing a scarf special and a hats special.
Oh, just to make up for the weeks that you're going to have in between. Don't worry, I've got a bullshit on the way to you. You'll be happy to hear. So, like I said, we actually, Harry and I had a conversation, the podcast with Edgar Rathbun, the CEO of the Bulls, on this past Monday. We'll be publishing that on Sunday. Very, very enlightening conversation. Let me tell you that. Such an impressive guy, not even 40 yet, and the CEO of the Bulls for the past 5 years. Says a lot, doesn't it?
That is impressive. That is impressive.
I'm telling you, we were blown away. Anyway, let's say enough of Harry. Let's talk about you. You published a video a couple of weeks ago about your visit to France. I spoke to each other when you were in France. That was in your kitchen, or the kitchen over there. That was quite interesting. I like that. And then you had a nice little walkabout video where you walked around the port and you were wondering about the lack of jerseys, rugby jerseys over there, and then you found them eventually. But you actually attended the match there, one of the biggest matches in France in terms of rivalry and everything else. Talk to me about that. I'm fascinated to hear about that.
Yeah, so I went to Toulon versus Toulouse in Marseille. So it was a very special game. It's arguably the biggest game of the top 14, arguably. And so normally Toulon play in the Stade Mayol. This was played in the Marseille football stadium, which is 67,000 seats, and it was completely sold out. 67,000 fans for a club game. And the show that they put on and the atmosphere in the game is beyond any club rugby game I've ever been to. Obviously, more people there than to any club rugby game I've ever been to. But things like, it was much more similar to soccer in Europe than it is to rugby in terms of atmosphere. And the things like the show, the light show, they had dancers on the pitch at halftime entertainments. They have interaction with the fans. They have like the banners, tifos, and flags and things that all the flat fans wave. It's just a completely different culture, and it speaks to how different rugby is in France. The thing that I think that people who maybe outsiders to French rugby need to understand about French rugby is the French put club rugby first. It's a much more like the soccer paradigm. For all the people complaining about how they're not sending a strong team down to New Zealand this summer, that's just how it is. That's not unique to this year. They always do that because there is an overlap there with the finish of their club season, which is the top 14, which between the top 14 and the Pro D2 have nearly a €500 million turnover per season, or it was in the latest account, so nearly €500 million per season turnover, by a long way the most valuable rugby club competition in the world. And that's because of its first. And we're talking about how they don't, it's much more about the kind of representation of the place. You know, obviously in rugby and a lot of leagues, we've moved to a franchise structure, and you've got newer clubs trying to generate a fan base that are associated with the place, but maybe the place name isn't in it. In France, it's historic, it's old clubs, they represent the towns, and there isn't that competition with football like you have in most places in Europe. In the south of France, you have places like Clermont where the rugby team is the big thing, or Toulouse where the rugby team is the big thing, or Bayonne. Bayonne's football team was quite famous, but went out of business very sadly a couple of years ago, and now the rugby team is everything about that town, and now they get 32,000 fans every single week in Bayonne, which is the most ever anywhere in the world, and it's like that. It's fervent. It's the heartbeat of some of those towns, and like I said, the most attended league, and the most one that people are invested in. A long season, 26 regular games in the top flight, and 30 in the second flight of the Pro D2, with the promotion and relegation between the two. And it's a completely different culture. It's a completely different attitude, and it's just like I said, the club game comes first. It's much more similar to how football is in England.
By the way, do you speak French?
No.
Do you understand it a bit?
I can understand a bit of rugby vocabulary in French. And when we were in France, I managed to communicate effectively with most people, although more people spoke English to me than I spoke French to them. But you know, all you have to do is order in a restaurant. That's all you really need to do.
Yeah, you're right. Point at the menu. I want this one over there. But you just mentioned that the teams are typically representative of a region. This past weekend, Bordeaux won the Champions Cup. And I found myself, to my horror, supporting Saints in that game. I said to Harry before, and I'm not sure which team I'll support. I'll know when the game starts. And when the game started, I was rooting for Saints, I suppose, because they were the underdogs. You know, typically South African, I like supporting an underdog. But Bordeaux is quite a new team. They might be representative of the region, maybe, but 20 years old or something like that. What's the history behind that?
Yeah, so they formed in 2006. They are the product of a merger. So their name is Union Bordeaux Bègles, which is a union between Bordeaux and Bègles. Now, I think Bègles was the university team, and Bordeaux, Stade Bordelais, was the historic rugby team, something like that. If you'd like to know, I did a podcast with Maz, who is a UBB fan, lives in that part of the world, and she explained the whole history. But in 2006, so it was two clubs that weren't doing very well. They were in the second division, and they said it's better to succeed together than to fail alone. And mergers are kind of a bit of a dirty word in rugby, and we think of it as a sign of failure, as particularly in Wales. I can say that it's a very negative word. In France, it's not obviously ideal, but it's much more accepted for clubs to merge, particularly if they're lower level, to say, if we get together, we can do something better. And that's what they did. So these two clubs, they're pretty much from the same city, merged together. La Rochelle are also the product of a merger. They had a merger in their very early history. The French clubs, the Parisian clubs, I should say, of Stade Francais and Racing 92 very nearly merged. If you go through a lot of French clubs' histories, there is a merger in there somewhere. I think Racing 92 already had a merger in their history a long time ago anyway. So it's kind of normal-ish, but UBB, as we know them, came into being in 2006. They got promoted into the top 14 in 2011, and then they've been building ever since there. You would be surprised as to how many top French clubs were only promoted to the top 14 quite recently. I think Toulon were promoted in 2008. I think Racing were promoted in and around that time as well. La Rochelle were promoted, I think, in the 2010s. So there's quite a lot of new money at the top of French rugby, of teams that have come from below. And then you've got old clubs like Brive and Biarritz. Brive have won the European Cup. Biarritz have been in the finals of European Cups, are now in the second division. So there's quite a lot of to and fro there, shall we say. So yeah, it does seem like a very remarkable story from the outside. It is kind of normal-ish in France, which is again speaks to the uniqueness of rugby over there.
One place a merger is quite common is in business, and something about the French teams that's quite noticeably different to, suppose, South Africa. is they have one owner, very rich guy who calls all the shots. What's that guy, Jackie something from Racing 92, said Siya Kolisi was invisible and out of shape or fat or something. Nobody in South Africa would ever dare say something like that, even if you do own the team. What's the structure there like? I mean, are they really these little fiefdoms, the rugby, like a little hobby that the guy does on the weekends when he drives up to the stadium with his Ferrari or something?
Pretty much, especially I think in the Pro de Deux, it is kind of the plaything of a rich guy who wants something to impress his mates with. Like, come down to my rugby club for the game, have a glass of wine in the hospitality and things like that. So, yes, so Jackie Lorenzetti is the owner of Racing 92. He's a real estate billionaire. Mohammed Altrad is a scaffolding magnate of all things, owns uh, Montpellier, and Altrad is the business that sponsors both France and the All Blacks,
Oh,
front
yeah.
shirt sponsors.
Yeah.
You've got Hans-Peter Wild owns Stade Francais. He's the guy behind Capri Sun, the juice drink. So that's why they're sponsored by Capri Sun. You've got Bernard Lamache, who's a very rich man, owns Toulon. So I think La Rochelle is kind of the odd one out. They're owned by the fans, but I do still think they have some quite rich backers. They've got a guy in charge of them as the head of a coffee company and things. So yes, not every club, but a lot of clubs are owned by very wealthy individuals, and it is a bit of a toy for them, which is why there is concerns about what can happen if and when these very rich men pass away, and those
Mm.
clubs can get into trouble. That's what happened with Biarritz. They were bankrolled by um, an IT billionaire or millionaire. He passed away, the money went, and they've been in a spiral ever since. So it's risky, and there's a lot of people in France worried about it, but so far everyone seems to be getting away with it for the time being.
Yeah, but what happens if the heir to whatever this estate is doesn't like rugby? What happens then? So you're basically at the mercy of somebody somewhere down the road. I mean, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. You're right. Isn't it typically the same model almost that's prevalent in England to a degree? Also private owners and the likes?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's a lot of clubs in England owned by very wealthy people. Bath being kind of the main example. I forget the guy's name, but he bankrolls the club. Bath are the best funded in the Premiership at the moment. Also, Bristol have a very rich owner. I think it's the same owner owns both the rugby team and the football team. They use the
Hmm?
same stadium. So yes, those are the kind of two private leagues where you have in New Zealand the clubs are owned by the union, as they are in Ireland. I know in South Africa you've got the provincial unions that own the clubs and things. But in France and England, it's kind of the most private leagues where it is a lot of sugar daddies pouring their money into it.
South Africa has changed a little bit in the recent past. They've split the amateur and the professional arms, and the professional arms are now owned by rich men. The Bulls are owned 74% by Johan Rupert and Patrice Motsepe. They also own 74% of the Boland rugby team. Stormers are owned by 74% by Red Dizer, which is a consortium of a banking family in South Africa. Marco Mazzotti is a billionaire over in America, owns Rock Nation and the life. He owns the Sharks with a couple of other people. I'm not sure about all the rest of them, but and, oh yeah, and of course, the Lions are owned by Altman Allers. I think he's a glass magnet or something like that. A lot of magnets, and he owns Ellis Park. He owns the entire area around it as well. So that's changed a little bit, and that's probably why the teams are getting a bit more um, well off in the sense they can lure Andre Pollard over here. So he won't be paid by the Bulls. He'll be paid by someone else working for a company on the payroll, something like that. So that's interesting. Right. What else can you tell me about France? The Pro de Deux, what I don't know how to pronounce it. What is that in number one and number two? Why is it now suddenly being streamed on a YouTube channel?
Yes, what a great story. So the Pro D Day is French for D. De, which is French for two, so it's the Pro D2, I suppose, in English,
Mm.
um, is the second division. So it's like it's not really like the Curry Cup because there's promotion and relegation with it from it's to the top 14. They're both owned by LNR, which is the company that runs it. So they're and the TV rights are sold together. But there was no TV, no one had bid for the TV rights in the UK. So it was kind of a gap in the market. And it's quite a large gap because in France, the Pro D2 and the top 14 or the top 14 is French for 14, is they don't clash. So what you have in a lot of places around the world is that the second tier clashes with the first tier. That's how it works in England. Whereas in France, the second tier plays on Thursday and Fridays, the top tier plays on Saturdays and Sundays.
Oh, you mean clash in terms of schedule? Okay.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So the Pro D2 plays on days where there's otherwise no rugby, so, like on a Thursday night. And so it would have been good for someone to pick it up, but for whatever reason, it hasn't been. So this guy, Tim Cocker from Egg Chasers, has got a rugby channel called FRUK, and he made contact with the Pro D2 and said, "I'll how much money is it to stream one game a night, Thursday and Friday on YouTube?" And they came to a deal, and they haven't said how much it actually cost them, but he likened it to buying a new car. Now, I'm sure he's not buying cheap cars. I'm sure he's buying very nice cars, but my takeaway from that is less than £100,000 for a streaming deal for the end of this season and the entire of next season. So it's an amazing story. They've gone from, in a week, they've gone from 6,000 subscribers to 10,000 subscribers. They might be on even more than that now. So yeah, so I'm enjoying that as well. There's a game tomorrow between Provence and Grenoble, which is the semi-final, and I'm looking forward to that a lot. So there's going to be some big players playing for that, none less so than George North plays for Provence. You've also got Jimmy Gopperth plays for Provence.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to be tuning into that game tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Now, we've talked about the Champions Cup in France, everything else. What's come up this week is with a big fanfare in very little detail. The Club Rugby World Championship was announced. I think, I don't know if that's the right word or the right name, but that's going to be running from 2028. And immediately everybody was in an uproar about the way that this tournament was structured. Talk to me about how it is structured and what's so fundamentally flawed about it. You wrote an article about all things rugby, for all things rugby as well. So I'm sure you've got a nice little bit of inside information for us there.
I don't think I have any inside information. The format as we understand it is it will start in 2028. It will be played in Europe, and it will be made up of the 8 quarterfinalists from the Champions Cup. The Champions Cup will get to the quarterfinal stage and then stop, and then they'll play the rest of the leagues. And then at the end of the league season, so my understanding is that the finals of the leagues, the top 14 of the Premiership and the URC will be moved forward, and then there will be a 16-team competition played across 4. Everyone keeps saying 4 weeks, but I think it must be 5, or 6. Like I said, 8 Champions Cup teams, and then 7 Super Rugby teams, and then 1 Japanese team, we're told. And interestingly, it doesn't say the Japanese champions, it says an invited Japanese team. So it could be not the best Japanese team. If you're cynical, you'd probably say it's the Japanese team with the most exciting Springboks or All Blacks that they have playing for them that season.
Ooh.
So it's, yeah. So I've seen a lot of Kiwis kind of explaining why Super Rugby would only sign up for it if there was that number of Super Rugby teams in it, and B, in order to make it different enough from the Champions Cup, you need to have a greater proportion of teams that don't normally play in it to make it interesting. And I see that, but I also put it to New Zealand that it's very easy for them to say that, knowing that they will have probably at least 4 teams in it. When you are coming at it from the point of view of someone like me, who's a Wales fan, or an Italian fan, or a Scottish fan, or even a South African fan, where there's a very real possibility that you will have 0 teams in it. So I, like you said, wrote an article about it, and I came up with top 5 issues with the Club World Cup as we understand it so far. So number 1, will the fans definitely care? We already have a Club World Cup in soccer. Soccer is obviously bigger than rugby in the UK. And the Club World Cup in soccer is played every single year, and nobody really cares. If you were to ask a Premier League fan what trophy they would most like to win, the Club World Cup is probably not even top 5. No one's that bothered. And the demand for this was not coming from the Northern Hemisphere. I haven't seen any Northern Hemisphere fans saying, we really want this. You know, a playoff game between the URC champions and the Super Rugby champions, yeah, interesting. We'd watch that. That would be cool. But not a 16-team tournament. No one was after that. So they're already on the back foot. And problem number 2, Super Rugby does not equal the Champions Cup. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Super Rugby equals the URC or the top 14 or the Premiership. It's a domestic league. And the, to have, like, just think about the qualification process. So for a Northern Hemisphere team to get into this cup, you need to get into the top 8 of your league, which is easy if you're English, harder for everybody else, a year out. Then you play a pool stage qualification process. Then you play a knockout game, a round of 16, and then you're in it. Whereas in Super Rugby, you have to finish 7th in an 11-team league and you're in it. So already you talk about sporting credibility, it lacks that. And fans will know that. Northern Hemisphere fans will know that. And that will impact their buy-in to the competition. Next point, point number 3. Small world, like I said, there's a significant number of nations potentially not being represented. So if it was this year, there'd be no South African teams, there'd be no Welsh teams, there'd be no Italian teams. And then if you look at emerging nations, there would be no one from USA, which we know is a critical market for rugby's growth. And there's no South American teams, and South America is turning into a hotbed of rugby. And then you get into the whole of the rest of Europe. So you can't really call it a World Cup if there's only 5 or maybe 6 nations are going to be part of it. If you contrast to the International World Cup, there's just expanded to 24 teams. It's not really worth the name. And I think it's interesting that Japan, which we know is a strategic market for growth for rugby union, has been given a guaranteed spot. But South Africa, arguably the biggest market for rugby union, has not. And I think that's a strange arrangement if that is what we proceed with. Problem number 4, the calendar gets even more crowded. Look, I'm just going to be open and honest with you. There is a very real chance that many Northern Hemisphere teams won't care about this Club World Cup and will field either B teams in the qualification process, which they do already in the Champions Cup, or when they finally get to it, they'll send a B team because they're prioritizing other things. If you think the Kiwis have melted down over France sending a B team this summer, you just wait till they come all the way up here to play Toulouse or La Rochelle or UBB. And it's the Espoirs, which is the under-20s teams, get put out against them. And it's 50, 60, 70 point walkovers against uncompetitive teams. You know, it's going to go down badly. And I'm afraid there's definitely a big European team will not be interested and will chuck the qualification process for this. I guarantee it. And then finally, point number 5, what does it say about the Champions Cup? If the Champions Cup was going incredibly well and everybody loved it, would they be cancelling every 4th iteration of it? Probably not. Probably not. Now, if I put my cynical hat on and I say, why is this happening? It seemed, follow the money. It seems pretty clear to me that this is the Super Rugby unions looking up at Europe, seeing 67,000 fans packed into Toulon versus Toulouse, seeing UBB getting 32,000 fans a week, seeing the likes of Saracens and Harlequins getting 70,000 fans at Twickenham and thinking, ooh, we'd like some of that. Are Toulouse looking at Super Rugby and thinking, we need to get down there and play against these guys? No. New Zealand is a small country population-wise. This is just a fact. New Zealand does not represent a significant area of potential of growth for someone like Toulouse. And, the top 14 doesn't even do English language highlights on YouTube. They really don't care about any market other than the domestic market. See my previous point about the Pro D not having an English TV deal. So who is this benefiting more? This is the Super Rugby teams wanting to come to Europe to play in our stadiums, to get the experience of playing in France and things and get the money that way. I'm afraid that's just what it is, in my opinion. Now, I'm told by Brett McKay has educated me that apparently Super Rugby hasn't signed up to this yet. If they haven't, they should probably sign now because they're not going to get a better deal than this. That would be crazy. So, exactly that. Like I said, that's just my super cynical point of view on it. And like I said, if there's no credibility to it, the fans will see that and they will switch off from it.
Well, I can tell you something. That's probably the best explanation I've heard from anybody, bar none. Very well put. Thank you for that. Not even Jake White knew that much. I asked him yesterday, what does he think about the qualification? The Bulls and the Stormers, like I said, wouldn't have qualified, but Moana Pacifica would have qualified after losing 85-7 to the Chiefs. And he said, well, that's clearly not sustainable. So, yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it. And let's put it into perspective. It's a dead duck, dead in the water. Make no mistake. I can't see it ever happening. So, talking about the URC this weekend coming is, of course, the quarterfinals. 3 South African teams in the quarterfinals. Just talk to me about what you're seeing. You've got your Scarlets shirt there. Leinster has once again flattered to deceive and didn't win the Champions Cup. Now they're all guns blazing going for the URC. That game, Leinster versus Scarlets, like I said earlier in this video, I'm going to support Scarlets because I don't want to support Leinster, even though RG Snyman plays for them. The point being, start of that game.
Marnus van der Merwe plays for us.
Yeah, of course. That's a good South African angle. There you go. I thought almost you would say Duan van der Merwe. No, Marnus van der Merwe, there you go. I've got a good reason to support you now, an additional reason. Talk to me about that game. Do you honestly think you've got a chance against the mighty Leinster?
Oh, there's a chance. Let me tell you a story. The year is 2017. The Scarlets have just put together an incredible run, playing some of the most attractive and watchable rugby that the club game has ever seen in its history. And they go away to Leinster in a semi-final. No URC team, well, it wasn't the URC at that time, it was the Pro 12, Celtic League team has ever won an away semi-final. And the Scarlets have to go to top of the table, Leinster. They score 3 brilliant tries early on to go 25 points up in the first 25 minutes. I think it was Aaron Shingler, Steph Evans, and I want to say Gareth Davis had scored the tries. Then disaster. Steph Evans gets a red card for a tip tackle on a Leinster player. And the Scarlets go down to 14 men. So they're not only playing away against Leinster in a knockout game, there's never seen a team win away from home in a semi-final, but they're doing it with 14 men. And they have to play, 55 minutes of a game with 14 men. They win the game. They hold Leinster out, and then they go to the final in the Aviva against Munster, coached at the time by a certain Rassie Erasmus, and they absolutely destroy Munster, put up a record margin, playing the best rugby that the club game has ever seen, and lift the title. And in doing so, they win the final ever iteration of the Celtic League with 12 teams in it, having won the first ever iteration of the Celtic League with 12 teams in it back in 2004. Some would say that makes us the dominant team in Celtic League history. That's for others to judge. So, and then just to tell you about how good the Scarlets were in that season, do you remember in the Lions test, in the first Lions test in 2017, the Lions scored that end of the world try, length of the field. Liam Williams gets the break. Jonathan Davis gets 2 touches. Liam Williams and Jonathan Davis both played for the Scarlets that season. That try was made in Llanelli. And Jonathan Davis was asked after the game, is that the best try you've ever been a part of? And he responded, you obviously don't watch the Scarlets. So basically what I'm saying is history is going to repeat itself. We're going to go over there. We're going to play Leinster. We're going to absolutely batter them, probably with 14 men. And then the Scarlets' march to glory goes on.
To Pretoria. So, I love your enthusiasm. And the first thing I want to ask you is, yes, that was 2017, but what went wrong in the meantime? I mean, it's definitely not the same Scarlets that it was then. What's happened?
A lot went wrong. Many things went wrong. And the Scarlets have actually done very well this season in parking the excuses. Welsh rugby is full of excuses, things that you could give as reasons why the teams shouldn't be competitive. The Scarlets haven't listened to any of that. They've drawn a line in the sand and said, no, we're going to find solutions. We're going to make a plan. And they've done that. They've recruited very well in the forwards. The set piece has gone from a joke to extremely credible. And if you look statistically, the Scarlets have got the second best scrum in the world in terms of percentage success. We've got the best line out in the league in terms of percentage success. So highly credible set piece. And an attack that's not free-flowing. We don't score lots of tries, but the tries that we do score are very nice. Very watchable. We love a set-piece move. And our entire backline these days is picked by Wales. And it's just young players playing with confidence. And I just think that the Scarlets go to Dublin with no reason to be afraid. We've already beaten Leinster once this season. We've beaten the Bulls this season. We should have beaten Glasgow. We made the Sharks look very ordinary. So we need to go there. And then the pressure is all on Leinster. And trust me, those players are going to have the voice of doubt in their heads. They're going to have the voice of doubt of, we've got to win something. This is a players who have failed to win a lot of things. And they've got a Lions tour coming up. 12 of those players are going on the Lions tour. So do you think they're going to be going full bore into 50-50 challenges? 50-50 balls? Not for me. Not for me, says Scarlets. It's a long old off season. Screw the off season. Let's play a semi-final instead.
Yeah, it's a knockout. Anything can happen. And like I said, I think the entire South Africa will be behind them as well. Simply because we don't want Leinster to win. I've said it before. I don't care if Jacques Nienaber is coaching them, and I don't care if RGS Neyman plays for them. I said it before. I don't want them to win. So yeah, let's leave it at that. I will, myself anyway, I will wholeheartedly support Scarlets. I've gotten used to supporting all these overseas teams. It's nothing new for me anymore. Talk about the Stormers versus Glasgow. The team's not been announced yet. Damian Willemse copped a plea so that he can play for the Springboks. You know, I don't want him to sit on the bench, on the sidelines when he has to play for the Springboks. So that was quite an interesting one. Do you think the Stormers stand any chance? I mean, last year they lost badly against Glasgow in the similar quarterfinal, also in Scotland. Do you think they stand a better chance now? Glasgow's not had a great end to the season. Lots of injuries. Franco Smith not really knowing like he knows what to do. A bit of it like a deer in the headlights. What do you expect of that game?
I think there's definitely a chance. It's an interesting game. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion by any means. The Stormers' kind of trajectory is up. They finished their season on a high, and Glasgow are finishing the season on a dip. So you'd say that, does that mean there's a crossover there? I'm not so sure. I think Glasgow are slowly starting to get some players, not lots, but some players back. The Stormers are still a team with problems, like the giving away penalties at the scrum collapsing, things like that. And I do think that the Willems unavailability is massive. Because it means that instead of having Sasha at 10 and Willems at 12, they're going to have Sasha at 12 and Manny at 10. And that's a completely different dynamic. It's a completely different... You're going to have Sasha touching the ball less, and you're not going to have Manny being what Willems was able to do is he was able to be the second 5/8 and kind of covers for Sasha when Sasha would go off and do something exciting. Manny's not going to do that. Manny's going to be, I'm the first, I'm the number one guy, I'm the boss on this field. And it's just not going to look the same. So that's a challenge that the Stormers have to overcome. The Stormers haven't been great away from home. I think in terms of away wins, they've got an away win against the Bulls. They've got an away win against the Scarlets, which was a tough one, not a great game. And then I can't remember who the other one was. But the Glasgow don't like losing at home. They very rarely lose at home. That's why the Bulls result was so impressive. And just the stats are close between the two on a lot of counts, but they are in Glasgow's favour. So I do think that Glasgow are favourites, but absolutely the Stormers have a chance. But as always with the Stormers, they are relying on Manny Lebok, Warwick Gallant, and Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu doing something amazing to make it happen. I'll tell you what they've definitely got to do. They've got to give Sasha the kicking team because it's going to be windy in Glasgow.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. I don't know. Let me just reiterate this. While we're recording this, the team has not been announced yet. So we don't know if Sasha going to be 12 or 10, but that's what it looks like, I suppose. I honestly don't think that's a good plan. Sasha is not a 12. 12 is a very different, very physical position. Sasha is a maestro. He's a surgeon. You don't put him in a position where he has to be a sledgehammer. It doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. He might have the rugby IQ and everything else, but he's not the right player. He's a 10. Keep him at 10. If he doesn't want to, the Stormers don't want to use him at 10, let him come to the Bulls. We'll welcome him with open arms. I'm telling you right now. So if you had to make a call, what do you think? Who do you think is going to win that one?
Glasgow by 9, I would say.
That's a wide margin. Jeez, all right.
But I just think that it's going to, I think about the quarterfinal last year. Also, Glasgow have won 4 games in a row against the Stormers. So there's something to that. And that includes knockout games as well. So I just think that they're going to be too gosh darn organized for the Stormers. And the Stormers are going to be have to work too hard to beat them, and it's not going to be enough razzle dazzle this time. But as I keep having to reiterate, because I feel like people online are going to think I'm a Stormers hater. I'm not. I really like the Stormers, so I won't be sad if I'm wrong. I promise.
No, well, like I said, I always support any South African team as long as they don't play against the Bulls. Then I'll support the Bulls. So I'll support the Stormers or the Sharks for that matter until they have to face the Bulls, and then clearly I'm going to support the Bulls. Talking of which, the Bulls playing Edinburgh, who we lost against last time we played against them in the knockout against in the Challenge Cup. We thought we were going to win that one. We just never pitched for that game. The first half of it, we were just nowhere. Came back towards the end, and Jake said again this week at a press conference on the side of the field there that if the game was 5 minutes longer, they would have won it. If anything was 5 minutes longer, a lot of things would have been different in history. So I suppose it doesn't mean anything. And of course, Jake and Sean Everett are very good friends. Jake actually said he's going to invite Sean over for a braai on Friday night before the game. So what do you think, what's going to happen in that game? Do you think the Bulls have something to worry about, or are you confident? I must be honest, I'm a little concerned.
I'm not seeing statistically anything. I think we saw in the URC games that followed the Challenge Cup that Jake was keeping his powder dry in the Challenge Cup, and the URC, as we kind of have always known, is his main target. If I look across the stats, of the stats that I chose, which look at set piece, which look at attack, and which look at defense, the only thing that Edinburgh have over the Bulls is ironically carry dominance, which is a weird one. But everything else, the Bulls significantly better set piece, even better line out. I know that we don't think of the Bulls as having a good line out. It is better than Edinburgh's. Line breaks turning into tries, significantly better. Tries scored, only 5 more, but I think Edinburgh had some weird blowouts at times. Better defensive stats. There aren't great defensive stats, but if you go with the ultimate defensive stat, how many tries did you concede? The Bulls a lot less. So I can see Edinburgh scoring a few tries and maybe giving you some nervous moments, especially if you get the traditional Bulls switch off in and around the 60th minute. But it's the Edinburgh aren't a complete team. They have gaps, they have issues. They are not organised, particularly in their own 22. And the Bulls should just be too good for them. And like I said in the build-up to the Challenge Cup game, if you want to be champions, Edinburgh is the kind of team that you need to be beating comfortably. And I don't think it's realistic to come into this saying that Edinburgh are have a decent percentage chance of winning. Of all the statistics that I've looked at, this is the most one-sided one on paper.
Oh, is it? I would have thought Leinster versus Scarlets, and I'm not, giving you a hard time about that. I just thought that 1 versus 8, for example. That's very interesting. And of course, don't forget the fact that it's at Loftus. It's at altitude. It still does matter, and altitude and attitude and all kinds of Franco Smith isms for that matter. It does still make a difference. I spoke to a friend of mine, Ronaldo Botma. He played for the Bulls and the Sharks, and he played for Harlequins for 3 years in England. And he said, when you come up from the coast to play at Loftus, you're dead second half. Your legs just don't want to work anymore. You can't breathe anymore. It does make a difference. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that game. Do you think Sean Everett has sort of redeemed himself with the fans now, with the team doing so well? Or do you think it's a bit too soon or a bit too late for that matter?
So the interesting thing about Edinburgh is that they've gotten into the playoffs having won 8 games. So they've got a losing record. There's Benetton behind them, didn't get into the playoffs, winning 9 games. The way that Edinburgh did it is they just racked up the bonus points, whereas Benetton had games where they were smashed. Edinburgh were rarely smashed, and so picked up 15 bonus points in 18 games. And that's what got them in there. But of course, bonus points don't matter in knockout games. So I think the reality is going to bite for them there. I think Edinburgh fans have been quietened by the ends of the season where they've had to go, okay, we are winning games. But I still don't think he's won them over. I still don't think he's won them over.
Our friend Johan Jordan has said he's very glad to see Duan van der Merwe is going to be fit for the game because he's a good luck omen for the Bulls.
Is he? Is he never beaten them?
No, apparently not. So that's quite interesting. Him and Piers Koeman, of course, played for the Bulls. That's they know what it's like to play at Loftus. But I mean, they both lived in Scotland for so long now. I suppose they forgot what it's like. I'm sure they have. Anyway, okay. What are you calling that game?
It should be a 15+ point win for the Bulls.
I like that. I like those odds. Keep it coming. All right, the last game of the weekend for the South African teams, Sharks welcome Munster. Munster, the team with the woeful line-out, but sort of a knockout specialist, if you want to call it that. One team that you would never write off in a knockout. What are you expecting from that game?
So this game makes a mockery of rugby analysts everywhere because these are two teams that you cannot apply statistics to. If you look at the Shark statistics this season, you'd go, how the heck are they top 4 in their league? I think like their points difference was like single figures, or maybe only just broken.
Man. Top 3.
Yeah, top 3 in the league, and the points difference was not particularly good. If you watch them, like eye test, they don't pass the eye test.
They're woeful.
They won, what, 12, 13 games in the league? And that's why I'm saying, like, they make a mockery of rugby analysts, as do Munster. If I had to sum up this game in 2 words, it would be, God damn it. Because one of these teams is going to get... I was scared that this game was going to be the final, because these are just two teams that just figure out how to win. Munster are capable of winning away knockout games in the URC. The Sharks, like, think back to how they won the Currie Cup a year ago, and like went down to 12 men against the Bulls in Loftus and won, and things like that. So these are just two teams who can do knockout rugby. So anything can happen in this game. There's no point doing a statistical or analytical eye to it, because these are two teams that defy that kind of thing. The romance of sport, if you like. So if there's any team, ironically, in a funny way, a team that I would perhaps most back to go to Dublin to face Leinster and win, I would say the Sharks, because they've got players who have won bloody World Cups, 2 World Cups back to back. So, like I said, these are just knockout specialists, these teams. Honestly, I can't predict it. I can't predict it.
No, man, don't cop out now. Come on. Let's look at some matchup quickly. Eben Etzebeth, John Klein. I mean, that's one of the things people are talking about over here. I'd like to see what's going to happen. The scrums, maybe. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But still, you have to make a call. I'm going to put you on the spot.
I will say that it's one of my things that Munster fans don't want to talk about. They talk about all the Leinster this, Leinster that. They don't want to say that their second row partnership for the last 3 years was RJ Snyman and John Klein, and then Ty Byrne in there as well. That's a pretty good second row. No, but they're always injured. Oh, yeah, everyone's injured.
I was about to say, RJ never played for them. He was on the team sheet.
Don't ask them about Damien Dialende or Malachi Fakatero either. So, I don't know. I don't want to predict it. I don't know. I just got a horrible vision of Munster doing it. So I'm going to go Munster.
And it's at night as well. Now it's 7 o'clock or something like that. At the coast, it's going to be wet. The ball's very wet and slippery over there. That's the kind of thing that Munster must be used to, don't you think?
Definitely.
I've got a sneaking suspicion you might be right. My friend Belinda Glenn is going to shoot me. I'm telling you now. But I've got a feeling. The thing is, what I'm scared of is whoever wins that game is going to have to travel up to Loftus if the Bulls manage to beat Edinburgh and face the Bulls. And we've lost against the Sharks. I think the last 4 games we played against them, the Bulls now. I'm not comfortable with that, with those odds. I'll tell you what, I'm worried about that. I would rather face Munster than the Sharks. That's I think any South African team coming to Loftus always has a chance, because these local derbies are just something different. They're a different kettle of fish altogether. Now, bring Munster on, I think.
The path that Munster have got to win it, if they do it, you're going to have to hold your hands up and say it's the best victory in the URC so far if Munster win it from here. Sharks, Bulls, Leinster, probably. Wow. Mind you, I have committed on social media that if it's a Munster Scarlets final, I will go to that game.
I was about to say, you just said that's going to be Sharks, Bulls, Scarlets. According to your very confident prediction earlier in the video. So yeah. Listen, man, that was fun. I enjoyed that. I've just confirmed now your jersey will be traveling to England on the 21st of June. So keep you posted so we can make a plan there. Guys, you'll be very excited. You have to promise me you'll wear it at least once.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll wear it for a week when it arrives.
Okay, cool. But you must also put it in a frame afterwards or something, or hang it up in your lounge.
I just put it on the wall behind me. I'm looking for a jersey to put on the wall behind me at some point. So maybe I can be a contender.
All right, you. That was fun, man. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers.
Rugby with Huw Griffin